Good morning. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Zoom service. I'm the Reverend Sarah Lawal. Greetings from snowy McCall, where my family and I got a quick little getaway this weekend. So the wonders of virtual worship and technology are exciting for us that I can be here with you all the way from McCall. So just to let you know that the sermon today was recorded in advance just in case we encountered any technical difficulties, which of course we already have this morning as the church internet went out. So we are all just going to collectively do our Unitarian prayers to the Spirit that everything goes the way that it is meant to go this morning. And we're glad you're with us. We hope you're comfortable and that you have your coffee and sit back and relax and enjoy the service today. I want to give a special welcome to any newcomers who are with us this morning. We know it takes a lot of courage to join a new community, and we're really glad that you've taken a chance on us today. We invite you to fill out a newcomer form. We'll put a link to that in the chat so that we can keep you updated with all that is happening in our fellowship. And we have so much happening, so many ways to connect, to meet new people. I want to highlight a few announcements. First, specifically for our newcomers, our Inquirer series begins today. It's 5 sessions following worship each Sunday that help you learn a little bit more about who we are, about Unitarian Universalism, and meet other newcomers. We'll open up a special breakout room for the Inquirer series after the service if you want to stick around for that. And today's session is focused on our Unitarian Universalist history and principles. I also want to highlight that our annual auction is almost here. You should have received your emails about how to register and how to view the items. This auction is entirely online this year with a kickoff event this Friday and a closing event a week later. And I spent some time on the site yesterday previewing the amazing things that we have up for sale and auction this year. So do make sure you take a moment to peruse the site, to get your bids together, to register yourselves. We are so excited for all of the new ways that we have to share the auction together. And don't forget to get your raffle tickets for that beautiful quilt. You'll see it as my backdrop in the sermon. Tickets are $5 each, or 5 tickets for $20, or 20 tickets for $50. And all you need to do is just send your check into the fellowship with a little note in the memo line. I also want to let everyone know that our Plate Partner nominations for the next program year are now open. You can submit your nominations for organizations to become one of our monthly Plate Partners for the next program year. All of the guidelines and the form are on our website, and we'll post a link to that in the chat as well. We'll also post the auction links. There'll be lots of great links for you in the chat today. It's our practice at the fellowship to donate 25% of our unpledged plate offering to support social justice ministries. 2 of those ministries are programs of our own here at the fellowship. And this month, with the theme of beloved community, we are proud to offer our plate partner up to our MESCA Scholarship Fund. Since January of 2012, the generosity of members and friends of this fellowship have been able to fund scholarships for roughly half the tuition and expenses to help the youth of our partner congregation of more than 25 years in MESCA, Transylvania, help those youth fund their college educations. I know when we took our pilgrimage there in 2018, many of us got to meet some of those youth, and it was just a joy to be able to forge in-person connections with this beautiful community with which we share such a deep and abiding history. 25% of the unpledged plate offering will go to the MESCA Scholarship Fund at the end of the month. We'll have a special time in our service for you to make your contribution, but of course you can access our website and make your gift at any time during the service. As we gather together, even virtually, we like to begin with a land acknowledgement. The land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land stolen from the Shoshone-Bannock, Paiute, Nez Perce, and many other tribes who inhabited a vast region, including much of Idaho, before they were rounded up and forced to leave. This land has a long history, long before colonization. And we acknowledge that our presence here today is founded upon the exclusion and erasures of Indigenous peoples. So with this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. Many of these Native peoples live among us today, and we honor their connection to the land and support their right to sovereignty. And in the challenge of these truths, we invite ourselves to move through the world bringing justice in every way that we can, listening to the truths spoken to us by Native American peoples, making space for them to re-inhabit this place and giving them the resources they need to heal their communities. As I mentioned, we begin a new spiritual theme for the month, the theme of beloved community. And today we explore the challenges of building that beloved community in these times, and how the call of religious community, of the liberal religious tradition of which we are a part, is to live as if the beloved community already exists within us and among us. We're grateful today for all who made this service possible. Shireen Watson is serving as our celebrant, Carrie Bastian, our music director, Jem Emerson Page, our children's religious exploration coordinator, and Rachel Strong is our tech host today. And of course, we're grateful for all the beautiful music that we get to experience today, shared and created by our sibling congregations in Santa Monica and Brooklyn, New York. I invite us all to take a moment and breathe together. Fill your body with breath. Breathe with this beloved community. Know that as we breathe, we do so connected to one another and to a wider community of faith. And I invite you to hear the words of our opening poem this morning as we ring our bowl, as expressed to beloved community itself. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free. Oh, make us free.
At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in living rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalists are also lighting a flaming chalice, reminding us that we are part of a great community of faith. We invite a child to light our chalice to remind us of the future for which we struggle and the hope of beloved community. As Conley Watson lights the chalice from our home, you are invited to light your chalice and then share in the chat where you have lit your flame this morning. Good job. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. With our collective chalices lit in all our worship spaces, we offer you this call to worship. This is reading number 580 in our gray hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition. This is the central task of the religious community by the minister and UU historian, Mark Morrison Reed.
The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others.
Once it is felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community.
The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Come, let us worship together.
I invite everyone to cozy up for our temporal ages this morning. I am curious, how many of you remember the first time you heard that phrase, beloved community? And I'm really curious if any of you have just heard that phrase today for a special worship service to explore it. For many of us, we only know of it thanks to the freedom fighters of the civil rights movement and to Martin Luther King Jr. And we've borrowed it from the context of these communities of a majority Black people who, out of survival and a desire for justice, got together with their neighbors, faith community, and co-workers to fight together against everything that itself was fighting to harm and hinder Black people in the US. They did so in incredibly difficult times, but they formed these communities of support because they believed in justice and in our strength together. Beloved community means coming together to practice supporting and loving each other in radical ways that challenge everything that we're taught to keep us focused on our own individual survival and growth and happiness. It means caring about other people enough and caring about their survival and their growth, and to act on this care every day in lots of ways. Okay, we live in really difficult times too. Lots of people are uncared for and hurt, including losing their houses, being imprisoned, not having health care, or even not having other people to connect with and be cared for. When we are afraid, our brains take over with thoughts about how to fix our sad, angry, grieving feelings. But these thoughts don't help us feel our feelings, which is what our hearts need. And when we don't listen to our emotions, even happiness and sadness in hard times, it is much harder to listen when other people share their emotions or experiences. And we even fight it when they share stories that challenge us. But listening to those stories is what gets us ready for being in community. In those moments, we hear our heart's message much less clearly. We pay less attention to how we want to live out our values. And we have a hard time focusing on how to help each other in kind but honest ways. Practicing turning back into our heart, our feelings, our values, our listening is so important. In order to make it through big changes or to survive difficult circumstances, how do we shift our hearts? Listen to our hearts more than we listen to our fearful thoughts. Instead, also, how do we listen to the stories of our neighbors and loved ones? Our story this morning is going to help us think about this really big question. It is called Rabbit Looks for God. It's by Kelly Weissman, Asparuth Jackson. I love a big name like that. A bitter winter wind had filled the space between every tree in the beloved woods. And after it huffed its last frozen breath, the animals began to wander out from their dens and their holes to take stock of what felt like a new world. It didn't take long for Rabbit to notice that its neighbors were skittish and afraid. They saw all the trees and plants that had been knocked over in the wind, and all of their foraging spots for food and resources were now left bare from the now retreating cold. Even as the world warmed back up and started growing again, there were little fights and suspicious whispers. Rabbit didn't have more or less than anyone else, that it shouldn't be concerned about these things either, but it thought deeply about what lay in the hearts of its neighbors that could help fight this fear. Rabbit set out from the woods, carrying a question to all the other creatures it met. The rabbit came first to a butterfly fluttering in an open field, and it asked, Friend butterfly, high in the sky, what can you tell me about this thing called God? The butterfly thought for a moment and said, God is the guiding wind that blows me from this field to that one and points me to where the weather is warm and I can help the flowers bloom by flying from one to another. That was a beautiful response. The rabbit thanked the butterfly for that beautiful and honest response and continued its journey. Coming to a horse, very elegant horse, and its friend, grazing at the other end of that field, down there, the rabbit hopped up and asked, Friend horse, what can you tell me about this thing called God? Pardon? The horse looked at the rabbit, still chewing away at the sweet grass it had found, and said, God is the ground that holds me up, gives folks an open field to walk and run against, and all of this lovely grass to eat. Rabbit thanked the horse and hopped a little further on. It came a while later to a slow running stream, and peeking over the bank, the rabbit saw a fish in there. The rabbit dipped its mouth into the water and asked, Friend fish, what can you tell me about this thing called God? And then the rabbit raised its head back up and put one ear into the water so it could listen for the answer. And the fish replied, God is the water I swim in. It surrounds me all the time and gives me something to breathe and move through. Oh, I never showed you guys the fish. Here's our fish. It's a beautiful, colorful fish. I think it is called a rainbow trout, which is native to Idaho. Anyway, that's a little bit about fish. Back to the fish's answer. God is something that everyone needs to live. The rabbit thanked the fish, that's all the way down, and bounded off again, and very soon it almost ran right into, oh, don't be upside down, a tree. I'm going to take a second to very tenderly put this tree up. This is a funny thing to almost run into. The rabbit craned its head up towards the very topmost branches that only the butterfly and birds could reach. The rabbit couldn't. And the rabbit asked, Friend tree, what can you tell me about this thing called God? Now the tree answered slowly, but it did not hesitate. God is the sun that feeds me and all my neighbors and family. I spend all of my days reaching upward towards it and encouraging the shorter trees to do the same. This was so thoughtful. The rabbit thanked the tree for this thoughtful response and saw that it was getting late in the day, so it should sit back home for the night. Now, as the rabbit was approaching its den, its neighbor, squirrel, called out from nearby. Friend rabbit, after your day of asking the same question over and over, what can you tell me about this thing called God? The rabbit thought for a very long time and then said, I can tell you that the butterfly cares deeply for the flowers, and the horse wants everyone to have an open field to roam on. The fish knows that everyone needs water to live, and the tree hopes its children will grow as strong as it has grown. And then the rabbit went down into its burrow and slept for the night. In their own resting spots, the creatures of the forest who had shared their thoughtful answers felt their hearts glow a little warmer and grow a little calmer. I wonder, how would you answer Rabbit's question? What can you tell me about this thing called God? When was a time that you listened to someone sharing their feelings or an experience they had? When was a time that someone listened to you while you shared what is most important to you? How did that feel? I invite our children and youth to remain in our service today, but to join me afterwards in this Zoom room for our fellowship time, where they will be invited to share what they value most. Everyone, please join me in singing our community blessing. The music will begin very shortly.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
I recently started following a woman on Instagram who I affectionately call my friend Sharon. Sharon is a government teacher, and she touts that she is an official curator of fun and facts. She frequently reminds us that facts don't need your approval. They are just that, facts. I have appreciated the community of her followers from across the country, across the world really, and from across the political spectrum. She posts about different things that are going on in the world, mostly as it relates to government. Her goal is to give information without bias, so we can all form educated thoughts and ideas. She periodically gives people the platform to briefly state how they feel about something and asks us to listen to understand and not to respond. One question she posed that I particularly appreciated was, conservatives, what do you wish liberals knew? And then she flipped it around and asked, liberals, what do you wish conservatives knew? It was super interesting to read others' posts with the intention of listening to understand. And I found, while I of course didn't agree with everyone, I could better understand where they were coming from. I am typically a very conflict avoidant person, particularly when it comes to politics, particularly on social media. But being part of Sharon's followers, the Governerds, as we recently named ourselves, helped me get a little brave recently with a high school classmate. She posted an article on social media with a biased headline. I responded and wrote that I have made a renewed commitment to try to look at unbiased sources and get facts that are not skewed. Because if we are honest, we all have bias. And this is the lens we view facts through, and I am trying to be aware of my lens and my bias. I then reported the facts that I was able to discern about the situation, and then gave 3 ways people may interpret the facts based on their own individual perspective. To my surprise, my classmate responded and said, thanks for the insight. I always wonder how much more to the story there is. I appreciate your candor and leaving a comment. Wow, I was kind of blown away, honestly. It made me feel like building a community and connections with those we don't always agree with is possible and worthwhile. I also realized that in this situation, the outcome went well, and a comment on social media really wasn't that hard. In beloved community, it won't always be that smooth or easy, and the outcome may not always go as we hoped. We need to remember to stick with it even when it is hard. While building beloved community often won't be easy, and we certainly won't always agree, we need to work together because, as Reverend Teresa Soto states, all of us need all of us to make it. One way we help build our beloved community at Booth is through our generosity. This community offers something larger than our individual selves. It is a place of growth and caring. Together, we are yearning and hoping for more for ourselves and the world. Your generosity helps support a belief in a shared purpose through our plate partner, Boise Mesquis Scholarship Fund. We share our common yet precious resources, and they in turn belong to all of us when we share. By giving, we say yes to a community that does not let oceans limit our love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities, a place to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Thank you in advance for your generosity and support of this beloved community. The offering will now be received.
Beloved community as a spiritual theme for the month has become a kind of complicated idea for me. What does beloved community even mean nowadays? Certainly it harkens back to echoes of a grand vision from the civil rights era. But more often these days, I wonder if it's even achievable in the 21st century, with so much anger and division. And we hear it used often. I have heard from some of you that it doesn't feel authentic because you don't feel it or experience it in the way you think it's meant to feel. And sometimes I wonder if any of us really do experience it in that way. I use the language of beloved community all the time. I know that you hear it. I use it to name an aspirational vision for who we are and who we say we want to be. I use it to speak the words into being as an invitation to embody it until we become it. Some social scientists might distill that practice down to fake it till you make it, which kind of works for me sometimes. The late civil rights activist, Representative John Lewis, called this practice living as if. The formation and the flourishing of this grand vision of beloved community that permeated the civil rights movement in the 60s wasn't just about creating it out there in the bigger world for other people beyond the movement. It was about living it in the movement, for the movement. For Representative Lewis, beloved community was his own practice and orientation to a world that pushed him and so many others aside. A world that inflicted pain and violence and harm. And in a sense, that practice, that living as if practice, along with the vision itself, was revolutionary. In an interview with Krista Tippett, Lewis shared his living as if framework. And he said, if you live as if you're already there, that you're already in that community, part of that sense of one family, one house, if you visualize it, if you can even have faith that it's there, for you, it's already there. And during the early days of the movement, I believed the only true and real integration for that sense of the beloved community existed within the movement itself. During that movement, beloved community arose as a vision for what was possible. As we like to say, what was possible within, among, and beyond. For the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., beloved community represented the ultimate goal of racial reconciliation and economic justice. He wrote these words in his autobiography: "The aftermath of nonviolence is the creation of the beloved community, so that when the battle is over, a new relationship comes into being between the oppressed and the oppressor." That is a grand, complicated vision if I ever heard one. Beloved community rises up out of this era as a significant theological ideal because it deals with ultimacy, with the meaning of community, because it's aspirational in nature, something toward which we should always strive. Lewis described that work of beloved community in the civil rights movement as a work of love. And he observed that 60 years later, few of us would use the word love to describe the movement or the work, because that word is so complicated and so layered and so removed and overused. But John Lewis reminds us that love is work and love is faith. He says it's not just something that is natural. You have to be taught the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence. In the religious sense, in the moral sense, you can say that in the bosom of every human being, there is a spark of the divine. So you don't have a right as a human being to abuse that spark of the divine in a fellow human being. You don't have the right to abuse that spark of the divine in another if that's what you truly believe. For us as Unitarian Universalists, whose faith centers around work rather than belief, holding that love, that deep neighbor love, that work of love that Lewis describes at its core, beloved community becomes a foundational principle. But if I'm being honest, sometimes I wonder if beloved community is even possible. The civil rights movement made significant gains in its day, but now those gains have been pushed down and set aside yet again by systems of white supremacy with which we have never dealt with directly as a nation. We haven't dealt with it honestly and authentically with conversations about repair and reparation. When we look around at our world and culture today, the vision of beloved community disappears behind the rancor and the greed, the uncertainty and the division, behind hollow calls for unity. So what do we do? How do we still aspire, still work, still dream from the mountaintop, or even dream from the valley? It's easy to lose sight of the beloved community when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges and crises. And we begin to hear the words as trite, perhaps a bit overused, as cliched platitudes, rather than as a call for deep transformational work. Beloved community doesn't mean we all try to just get along. It's not a call for unity or even civility, because doing so disregards reality. Instead, we might consider practicing beloved community in the midst of what some scientists call contaminated diversity, recognizing the complicated ways in which life, both human and non-human, has survived and developed in the last few hundred years of human disturbance. Contaminated diversity. Our culture has conditioned us to understand progress as linear, as beneficial, as deeply individual, and best when organized into neat boxes and labels for a society created by those same systems. Even the implicit messages of a scientific academy that, according to scientist Anna Singh, centers the, quote, self-contained individual actor out to maximize personal interest and survival. Think about how much has been built upon Darwin's theory of evolution and survival of the fittest. In her book, The Mushroom at the End of the World, Singh explores this idea of self-interest and contamination. She writes this: the assumption of self-containment made an explosion of new knowledge possible. Thinking through self-containment and this self-interest of individuals at whatever scale made it possible to ignore contamination. That is, transformation through encounter. So hear that definition again. Contamination is transformation through encounter. So when we have contaminated diversity, we have a multiplicity of transformations, a diverse set of transformations occurring because of our diverse encounters. Beloved community points to that transformation through encounter. Positive or negative, our lives are transformed by our encounters with others, with groups, with systems, with our earth. Beloved community invites us to consider how we show up and move through those encounters in ways that support our collective survival, not merely our individual interests. In this precarious world, replete with uncertainty, we must realize that we are vulnerable to one another, that we need each other in order to survive. We need each other and diverse communities of collaboration and the willingness to work across difference. In John Lewis's practice of nonviolence, when they would literally role play and practice those conflicted encounters before every action, they had to remind each other to practice seeing a potential attacker as one's a little baby, as possessing of that divine spark, that inherent worth and dignity, despite the actions that person may have taken that put them so far off track. So, beloved, community invites us to consider how we stay in community with difficult or offensive people. And by community, I mean all of them in their formations of our families, our church community, and the wider communities in which we live and work, even our nation. And there's no easy answer to this dilemma. And as I talk about it, I find myself welling up with resistance because there is so much harm and trauma that has happened in recent months and years, and even in generations. It makes thinking about the question of how to stay in community with difficult people so very hard. And my gut reaction is often, but I don't want to. And I know that wanting to or not is somewhat beside the point, that there will always be people in our midst with whom we disagree, who are difficult, who even cause us and others great harm. And we need to learn how to respond and learn how to live and learn how to collaborate and learn how to love in space together. And that's not the same as forgiving them for their wrongs or loving them in spite of their wrongs, but rather just how we embody those ideals and those spiritual practices in the midst of all of that challenge. How do we collaborate? Our Soul Matters resources remind us that to stay in community with difficult or offensive people, we have to hold on to hope. Hope that they can change and grow, hope that we can change and grow. We have to believe that their better selves exist and will eventually show up. We have to have faith that giving them the benefit of the doubt is worth it, that assuming their good intentions isn't foolish. This kind of hopefulness and generosity toward others is hard work. And embodying that hopefulness and generosity, that belovedness and assuming good intentions, does not mean that we ignore and fail to acknowledge the impact of harm when it occurs. Interrupting harm, interrupting oppression, marginalization, even that personal ouch, even when it's a well-intentioned mistake, is part of building the beloved community. It's a responsibility of the whole to center relationship over tasks and goals, over strategies and outcomes. I have a colleague who calls this holy interruption, practice that we are called to engage in over and over and over again. In a workshop I'm taking, our facilitator calls the work of calls this the work of calling up rather than calling out or calling in, reminding us that when our conversations are centered in relationship, in human fallibility, and in the hope and quest for our collective liberation, that it helps us all bring the beloved community into being in each moment. The work of beloved community is bigger than we usually imagine. Perhaps not. Perhaps we know how big it is, and that's why sometimes we resist it. It's not just about building a better world, it's also about building up each other's faith. We're in a battle, not just against the division between us, but also the doubt within us. And so I'm reminded of the rabbit of our story, who seeks to understand others and the nature of God where they are at, through their eyes and experience, without having to change it or rearrange it, and allows himself to build up their faith alongside his own. The work of beloved community, the words of beloved community, are words we must speak again and again and again, so they take root in our minds and bodies and spirits. I say them over and over again. I'm willing to engage in the work, as hard as it is, over and over again, planting the work and the words as seeds of memory and future possibility for the world as it ought to be. Because the alternative is to ignore the world as it is, allowing all those systems of harm, extraction, oppression, and more to continue unchecked. The call of our Unitarian Universalist faith invites us into an imagination of building a different world, an emergent world, and into the practices and the embodiment of living as if the beloved community already exists. May it be so. Amen. Well, it is quite an experience being preached to from yourself. And they say that a good sermon is always a sermon that the preacher most needs to hear. And I needed to hear those words today. So thank you for experiencing them with me. Amen. Part of how we can live as if the beloved community already exists and practice beloved community we already do together every week. And I know it's difficult when we can't do it together in person, but when we share our lives with one another, when we share the simple moments of joy and the deep wells of sorrow, we are recognizing that divine spark that lives within each of us and hoping that we can take that out in the world and recognize it in others when it's a little more difficult. So we open up a space each week to receive and carry the joys and sorrows of this beloved community. I have a few that I want to start with, and then we'll open it up and invite you to share your joys and sorrows in the chat while we hear some beautiful music. I do want to say a special joy and happy birthday to Mary Nodell, who just celebrated her 86th birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Mary. And we continue to carry in our hearts the sorrow of the Sherman family. Roger's mom died 2 weeks ago. We send you all of our love and care as you continue to mourn that loss. Friends, please share your joys and sorrows with each other as we hear this beautiful rendition of Wanting Memories.
Dum 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 dum.
I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. You used to rock me in the cradle of your arms. You said you'd hold me till the pains of life were gone. You said you'd comfort me in times like these, and now I need you, and now I need you. And you are gone. So I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Since you've gone and left me, there's been so little beauty, but I know I saw clearly through your eyes. Now the world outside is such a cold and bitter place. Here inside I have few things that will console. And when I try to hear your voice above the storms of life, then I remember that I was told. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I think all the things that made me feel so wonderful when I was young. I think all the things that made me laugh, made me dance, made me sing. I think all the things that made me grow into a being full of pride. I think on these things, for they are true. And I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. I thought that you were gone, but now I know you're with me. You are the voice that whispers all I need to hear. I know a please, a thank you, and a smile will take me far. I know that I am you and you are me and we are one. I know that who I am is numbered in each grain of sand. I know that I've been blessed again and over again. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes. Yes, I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes.
Dum, 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 dum.
Beautiful. Friends, I invite you to join me in the spirit of prayer, and we'll end our time of prayer together with a shared moment of silent meditation. In the work of beloved community, we are invited to remember it will take all of us to make it a reality. Our prayer today is a litany from Teresa Inez Soto and Megan Foley. And the response is, all of us need all of us to make it. You are invited to speak that phrase aloud each time. Say it with me, loud or soft. All of us need all of us to make it. Let us take a moment to center ourselves for prayer with a few breaths. Spirit of life and love. In a world where some of us are targeted for struggle and brutality, where others of us benefit and flourish, we pray, all of us need all of us to make it. In a world where powerful people of ill will and indifference make us fearful for our safety and our futures, we pray. All of us need all of us to make it. In the excruciating space that lives between seeing and naming, hearing and changing, we pray. All of us need all of us to make it. Make a picture in your mind of someone you aren't very happy with right now, of a difficult person. Look at their face in your mind and pray the words, all of us need all of us to make it. Unitarian Universalists believe that all of us need all of us to make it. We remember to see the beauty of the world through our own eyes, to be in solidarity with the movement that centers voices from the margins, always. All of us need all of us to make it. Amen. I felt it was fitting to end our service today, reminding all of us of this beloved community and all of us who make it happen together, with this beautiful video set to the music of Only Love by John Prine and sung by our own William Emerson Page.
Close your eyes, some folks do. You may dream a dream that's twice your size, all night through. When the morning comes, who's to tell your dreams to only you? Only love, love only love will do. Only love, love only love comes true. Nothing else, you see, there's nothing else. Only love, only love. I have known a love within my heart, one or two, where one love would end and one would start. I never knew if love should come your way, you learn to say, I love you, I love you. Only love, love only love will do. Only love, love only love comes true. Nothing else, you see, there's nothing else. Only love, only love. Only love, love only love will do. Only love, love only love comes true. Nothing else, you see, there's nothing else. Only love, only love.
Oh, every time I watch that video, I get all choked up, and I've seen it a lot of times. Thank you, Will, for that beautiful song, and thank you, friends, for being part of this beautiful community. That video lives on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it anytime you like. I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our closing blessing. May we live as if the beloved community has arrived, welcoming our complicated and contaminated diversity, inviting transformation in each encounter. May we unveil the bonds that connect us as we seek justice for all and rest in the work of love. May we remember the words with which we began. Alone, our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Blessed are we all. Go in peace.